Welcome, everyone. My name is Elvin Freites, and I am the co founder, along with my partner, Dr. Joseph Solucio, of the higher education podcast, The EdUp Experience, where we make education your business. Thank you so much for joining us today live from the Interfolio Virtual Summit 2022 to talk with Andrew Rosen, Interfolio's CEO, and Theo Pillay, Elsevier's Senior Vice President and General Manager of Institutional Products. It's a pleasure to talk to you both today. Just want to remind everyone that there will be no audience Q&A in the chat, but Interfolio will follow up. So, also want to let our audience know, which is pretty cool, we are recording this live for a future EdUp Experience podcast episode. It's going to be super exciting. So, let's get to it. Now, earlier this month, Elsevier, a global leader in research publishing and information analytics and part of RELX, closed the acquisition of Interfolio. This is good news for their customers and their future work with higher education. I'm looking forward to learning more about your partnership. But first, let's have a little fun. Let me give our audience a bit of information from both of you, Andrew and Theo. Theo, we're going to start with you first. So tell us a little bit about your hero's journey. How did you get to where you are today?
My journey, very briefly, I started life as a researcher, actually. So my background was in physics and applied mathematics, and I worked for a number of years in a corporate research lab. And at some point, I realized that I could apply sort of my training and thinking and methods to solve sort of more practical business and product problems. And the appeal of being able to do that, of being able to make a difference to people from a product point of view, I really enjoyed. And so I moved in that direction. And for me, it's particularly gratifying today to be able to do that in the context of scholars and academic institutions, because that's where I started, that's where I came from. So I really love the space for that reason.
Got it. Fantastic. Thank you, Theo. Andrew, what about you? What's your hero's journey? How did you get to where you are today?
Oh, God. I feel like I've had two lives. I was an international tax lawyer on Wall Street as I started my career after law school. And one day in 1997, two friends brought me a horribly written business plan and financials that made no sense for an idea. And the next thing I knew, I was rewriting the plan and making the financials work. And 3 months later, I was moving my family to Washington, D.C. and starting a company called Blackboard. And since then, I've been in higher education technology ever since.
Gotcha. Wow, that's great. Well, thank you for starting Blackboard, by the way. I'm sure a lot of people appreciate that. So that's fantastic. So, okay, now a little bit more fun. Let's talk about something that is not on paper. Tell us a little something, a fun fact about yourself that is not on paper, not on your resume, something we can't research, we can't find. So we'll start with you, Theo. Go for it.
So I suppose given the background I just described about being from a hard science background, one thing that people may not know is I have a strong interest in contemporary art. And over the last couple of years, I've been helping my wife, who is an artist, set up and run a gallery space that's targeted at artists who, for various reasons, family, health, geography, whatever it might be, find it difficult to access the traditional art world. And so we've been trying to create opportunities for them to do exhibitions in hybrid virtual and on-location environments, but specifically targeted at those sorts of people, partly because my wife herself, as an artist with a family and children, felt that it was an area she found difficult to access as well. It's been an incredibly gratifying experience, actually, and it's certainly given me a lot of appreciation for the different dynamics that people working in arts and humanities have to face.
Yeah, I agree. I worked in the arts too, in higher education, and I appreciate the arts, and the artists are fantastic. That's wonderful. That's great to hear. Okay, Andrew, you got to follow that one up with a good one, Andrew.
Oh, that's a tough order to follow. So let's see. But most people don't know about me. I'm an avid tennis player. I was a ranked junior way back when in California, and I still play pretty frequently. And I am a fairly avid photographer. I've done a show on my work from Burma, and I've sold a handful of works. So that's how I sort of keep my my creative juices rolling.
Oh, fantastic. So we got the arts in common there. That's fantastic. That's great. Well, thank you both, gentlemen, for sharing with us. That's very cool. It makes you more human, more real. So we appreciate that. So, all right, let's start. Let's dig into it. So we're going to talk a little bit about why the acquisition. I'm sure that's like the number one question on everyone's mind. So, Theo, let's start with you. What motivated Elsevier to acquire Interfolio?
Well, if I simplify it down, I suppose there's three things. One is that we share a common interest in helping faculty and institutions succeed, and that came across very strongly from the very first meeting that Andrew and I had. The second, which developed over time, was that we really believe in the vision and that Andrew and the team expressed, and we were very impressed at the progress they'd made towards that vision. So their ability to build and to deliver products that customers love was really impressive, actually, and fit well with what we were trying to achieve at Elsevier. And the last reason was that what we saw as we talked to Andrew and the team at Elsevier, at Interfolio, was a very complementary portfolio. There are many things that we have and we do that fit really well together, actually. And so we thought that the combination of Elsevier and Interfolio could together achieve a lot more than either company could independently.
Oh, okay, that's great. So, Andrew, I want to hit you with this question. So, how will the combined capabilities of Elsevier and Interfolio benefit the academic and research communities?
Well, first, I was really excited about what I always perceived as a natural fit for Interfolio in the Elsevier ecosystem. I mean, as Theo said, together we aim to deliver even a greater value to customers through really improved user experiences. You know, Elsevier has a tremendous amount of data assets that help institutions and scholars better understand their strengths and opportunities. And Interfolio has great technology that helps scholars and institutions aggregate and activate this data and tell their best stories. To me, it's always felt like, I don't know, peanut butter and chocolate. So in this regard, when you think about deeper integrations with Scopus, SciVal, Funding Institutional, Expert Lookup, Digital Commons, SSRN, I can go on. You know, I believe our users, scholars, academics, researchers, will see easier, more robust ways to tell their best stories across their faculty life cycles, and as well as sort of use our combined products to enhance their research activities.
So, Andrew, other than your excitement about seeing their stories, right? Is there anything else that excites you about the next phase of Interfolio's evolution?
I mean, that's easy. I mean, so much excites me about this next phase for Interfolio's evolution. Like, you know, we've been committed to scholars and faculty since our founding, and have had the pleasure of being able to expand our work to faculty affairs leaders and their institutions. I'm excited because Elsevier and Interfolio are very like-minded in our focus on the academic community. As with this partnership, I believe it's really about activating data. It's about knowledgeable resources, empathy, and understanding. But specifically, I've always viewed Interfolio as sort of scratching the surface with our products, but activating greater data sets is just the beginning and reducing friction for the academic and the administrator alike. Having access to great data scientists, data architects, fantastic technical talent to enable Interfolio to be better, faster, is really works to the benefit of our customer base. And that's really, really key from our perspective. Yeah. You know, what I've learned over the many months I've spent getting to know people like Theo, Olivier Dumont, Judy Versus, and so many more, is that Elsevier has this like unique empathy for scholars, academics, researchers. Many have worked, as Theo indicated, in the research community, and I believe that understanding and empathy makes Elsevier sort of the right home for us. And then, you know, Elsevier is one of the few organizations on this earth that understands the importance and pervasiveness of shared governance and peer review. And so not a lot of organizations have that knowledge or understanding. And so that was really, really key for Interfolio and our clients.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, let's move on to the impact on Interfolio's community. Theo, we're going to start with you on this one. So Elsevier overwhelmingly works with researchers and healthcare professionals. Interfolio is well known for being faculty first, as Andrew just talked about. How will Interfolio's current university and college partners fit into Elsevier's portfolio?
So one of the things about Elsevier is it is a large company, and large companies do have this challenge that it's difficult to always characterize correctly what they actually do. So Elsevier serves, you're absolutely right, that the heritage comes from research and scholarly publishing. But 15 years ago, Elsevier made investments in expanding its portfolio to really deal with a whole broader set of solutions and services around helping institutions with a broader set of questions than just research and just publishing. And so for us today, we've built over the last 15 years a wide range of different products and solutions that actually serve very similar customers to what Interfolio serves. So the acquisition of Interfolio is not a huge step for us in terms of the people we're talking to, the customers we serve, and the kind of solutions we serve. It's very complementary. There are things that Interfolio does that we don't exactly do today, but very often we're talking to the same people about the same kinds of problems. And I'm delighted that we can now talk to them about a larger set of things we can solve, but it's not a fundamental change. It's not a shift from our point of view in a dramatically different space. What you will sometimes see is a bit of a history, as everyone has, about language that we use sometimes, the way people talk about it. And possibly that might need to evolve a little bit with Interfolio coming in so that we are a little bit more inclusive in our terms. But there's not a fundamental change in terms of the kinds of problems we want to solve. And it's not really a huge change in terms of the people we're talking to. We have many joint customers today already.
Brilliant, brilliant. Andrew, any thoughts you want to add on that?
As I said earlier, Elsevier has incredible data resources and technologies that help scholars, academics, and researchers tell their best story and better understand their work's place to the benefit of society. So, my view is that Interfolio has technologies and modules that focus on activating data to the benefit of the scholar, the institution, the funder. To me, it's extremely complementary, evolutionary for our university partners and our academic users. So, I think Theo said it really, really well. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Andrew. All right, Theo, we're going to go back to you. So what key issues do Elsevier and Interfolio hope to tackle together?
Probably a lot. But if I pick one to start with, actually, I think that there's an interesting tension when you try and think about the amount of data and processes that institutions and institutional leaders are trying to put in place. And they're trying to put in place for good reasons, right? They're trying to create more visibility, make better decisions, create more transparency, understand how they're doing on different topics like inclusion and diversity, making the right choices in terms of the teaching investments or research investments. There are many good things that people want to do, but actually doing that requires extra work. It requires more data to be gathered together. It requires faculty to do more work on this. And that's a tension, right? Because ultimately, what you want faculty to be working on is doing the best research they want to do, doing the best teaching they want to do, delivering the best service for their academic communities. And so helping, I think, institutions achieve the broader goals and giving them the tools to achieve those goals in a way that's sensitive to the burdens it places, the demands it places on faculty, and making it a positive experience for them. I think that's the primary challenge we want to solve. Because the needs are not going to go away. The need for better data, the need to make better decisions is an important one that won't go away. But providing people with the right tools and services to do that in a way that's sympathetic and helpful as opposed to a burden, I think that's the core problem we'd like to solve.
Brilliant. Andrew, your thoughts. We'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I believe there's a number of things that we can accomplish together. So, as I mentioned before, unlocking additional ways to view and activate data, unlocking additional valuable methods to use data. For example, for Elsevier, enabling academics to use their data seamlessly in academic reviews or in profile systems and the like. For Interfolio, being able to better serve libraries and research offices with data that we already have. So I think there's a ton of things that will evolve into and work together seamlessly to bring to the benefit of our clients.
Got it. Okay, Andrew, we're gonna go to you on this one. So I'm sure many in the audience are wondering, what changes should my institution anticipate? So although the ownership change is fairly fresh, what might people expect?
Well, now that I report to Theo, it's probably more of a Theo question. But from my perspective, and based on my conversations with our Elsevier team, I think you'll see greater resourcing for some of the challenges we've been wanting to tackle. For example, expanding the data pipe in our Interfolio data service faster, enhancing our data taxonomy in the faculty activity reporting product, to be able to take advantage of the additional data contained in the Elsevier data ecosystem. We still have a lot of work to do, research to do, but I believe we're on the right track. We're looking at the right things. We know that our success is entirely reliant on the people in the audience, our amazing partners, the institutions. And you're going to continue to get great support from the Interfolio team. We're going to continue to pursue our product vision and believe that we now have the opportunity to accelerate what we've been working with many of our academic partners to accomplish. So, I think they're going to anticipate seeing some really great things start to evolve.
Fantastic. Theo, what are your thoughts?
Well, Andrew got that exactly right. So I don't really have much to add. Maybe just to emphasize that the idea here is that in the short term, nothing changes. So it's the same tools that people love, the same people that you have connections with, the same people who support you, the same people who answer the phone if you have a question. None of that changes. What I would hope to see change in, say, the medium term is that you will start to see improvements that come from the combination of the two. You'll start to see better data surfacing, less work in some areas, improvements in how the software works. And the hope is that these improvements are phased and they'll come through in the normal development process, and they represent the greater capabilities that Interfolio now has access to because we're now part of a combined organization. But hopefully they're all positive changes. And if they're not, please let Andrew and myself know, because the goal is to make something stronger here.
That's wonderful to hear, because as a professional in higher education for over 20 years, when you change different systems or platforms or companies, that's the first question is like, who am I contacting? My support, I got my people there. Am I still going to have that? And for you to say that, Theo, I think it's very comforting to a lot of people. I think it's very important. And then to hear the phases of improvement, again, as a professional, I just think that's wonderful to hear. So thank you. Okay, let's go to Andrew. Your question on this one. How will Interfolio's product roadmap be affected, if at all?
Well, right now, our roadmap is undisturbed, and you're going to be hearing about it a little bit later from our product organization. But we're focused on tighter, more robust integrations between the Interfolio modules, faculty search to RPT, activity reporting to RPT, lifecycle management to RPT, RPT to lifecycle management. We're releasing the new Vita Builder for greater, more customizable Vitas. That is all continuing. We are working on moving users and units to the platform level. We're working on expanding the data sets in the data service and the frequency of data updates through the data service. I mean, I see no interruption in these efforts, and I believe that Elsevier greatly enhances our ability to perform on many of these items. So as I see it, our roadmap will be affected, but in very positive ways.
Excellent. Theo, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that it's very early in the process, so we haven't really had a chance to even talk about the details of this. But the design principles that Andrew is talking about are the ones we're going to apply. In other words, the roadmap is the roadmap. The reason why we love Interfolio is because of the great plans that they have, and so we don't want to disrupt that. What we will do is look for ways in which we can slowly phase in improvements over the next couple of months.
Brilliant. Awesome. Again, great to hear. Great to hear. All right, let's talk about institution and user data. So we're going to start with you, Theo. So the industry observers seem both excited and a little nervous about the potential created by Elsevier and Interfolio. Some people are wondering about a growing concentration of data, quotes, air quotes for those who are just listening, and on scholars and institutions. Concerns include data privacy and access. Talk to us about such data concerns.
Let me just ask a quick question. Is the video working okay at the moment? Or
yeah.
Okay, good. So data, let me start, because this is a complicated question, with one very clear statement. Data security and privacy is extremely important to us. It's something that we talk to customers about on an ongoing basis, and I've heard feedback from multiple customers around the world around how important this is. And I think that one of the interesting things is that the feedback covers a wide range of different concerns that people have around data. People are concerned around what data is being captured. They're concerned about who sees that data. They're concerned around what that data could be used for beyond what they know. They're concerned about security of that data, whether it's potential for leaking that data to other people, or just in terms of which locations that data is stored in, what are the rules that cover that. It's a really complicated field to try to navigate. The other tension that I observe in talking to customers around the world is that you simultaneously have this concern around data and also a great desire to do more with data. So people are asking for things that require to capture more data, more pre-fill of things, better integration between services, more things that are automatically done for you, more intelligence in the systems that they use. So here there's two interesting tensions. It's about we want to do more, but we're kind of concerned about what the implications of doing more are, because how are you going to use that data and what is it used for? And the way we try to navigate that problem is really to try and think about it in terms of a set of really key design principles that we think about when we think about how data is used in our products and how we talk about data to our customers. And the three principles are, the first one is around a sense of ownership and control. Your data belongs to you, and we want to make sure that customers completely understand that, and that you have complete control over how that data is used. So we'll always tell you what uses the data is put to, and you always have a chance to decide if that's an acceptable use for you or not. The second principle we apply is transparency. So transparency comes through in a number of different ways. One way is we give you the ability to see what data we have about you and to make choices about how the data is used. Another way, and this is an important one that people maybe sometimes don't think about, is when there's data being used for example, a metric, or it's being used to evaluate somebody, as in give an output for even something simple like number of papers you published. We try and also always make sure you can trace that data back to the source. We show you where it came from, so that if it's wrong, or if you have a question about the methodology or around the metric, you can at least engage with it. Because black boxes around data are really difficult to deal with, right? Mm. And it's one thing if you don't know why Spotify or Apple Music recommended something. It's quite a different thing if you don't know why you're being ranked in a particular way as a academic or as an institution. So transparency in data and what's useful is really important for us. And then the third principle we really think about, and again, this comes from long discussions with lots of people who really have concerns around how data is used, is portability. So portability is, you're able to take the data out of the system, you can move to a different system, you can move to a different vendor if you want to, but you have control about taking the data out. It isn't locked in one place. And these three principles don't, answer every question perhaps and so on, but I think it's really important because it's such a complicated field to have some really strong points of view. And we build a lot of our strategy around testing it about, are we living up to our principles around ownership of the data, around transparency, and around portability. And we feel the more we can stick to those, the more comfortable people are about the way in which this data is used.
So, Theo, just FYI, we lost your video, but I got to tell you, it took a nice still photo of you. So you look great. The whole time, we heard you clearly, but your photo really looked fantastic. So don't worry about it. When you see the replay, you say, oh, that's a good, I'm glad it caught me on that still.
Got that photo. So what I might do is switch over and maybe I'll pass you on to Andrew to pick up the next one. But I'll see if I can get that fixed on my side.
Yeah, no worries, Theo. So actually, that's fantastic. I do want to ask Andrew. Andrew, what would you say in response to these concerns?
I love the way Theo framed it under the three general principles, control and ownership of your data, transparency, and portability. And that, portability, transparency is something that Interfolio has been all about. We're about, letting the scholar use their data to tell their best story. So those are really, really unbelievably strong theses for Interfolio. And then control and ownership of your data has always been a core component and principle for Interfolio as well. first and foremost, we hear and take concerns very seriously when it comes to data rights and privacy and access. And when we think about data rights and data privacy, you really need to overlay this concept of data ethics against it as well. And so that's where I think transparency comes in really strong ways. So we just, I say to our client base that we absolutely will continue to honor and protect customer and user data, and we're very clear about those data rights in our contracts and so forth. And we take GDPR and COPA very seriously as well. And I don't think we'd be in business if we didn't. So I'll pause there.
So here's my last two questions, which we actually ask all of our EdUp Experience podcast guests. So 2 questions, and we're going to start with Theo first, and then we'll go with Andrew. So Andrew, you got some time to think about it. So Theo, first question is, tell us something that we didn't talk about the Elsevier and Interfolio partnership, right? Maybe something we didn't cover that you want the audience to know, or something about what's happening in the future, something you want to plug, something's coming on products, something is amazing is coming along the line. You want to talk about it, and we didn't get a chance to talk about it. That's number one. Number two, what do you see as the future of higher education?
Right. So my challenge on question one is we are so good at asking questions that we've hit all the main topics. So what can I tell you that's even more surprising than that? I think actually I'm not going to try and tell you something surprising. What I will say about the combination is that Andrew and I are committed to, delivering real improvements to customers. One of the things that I loved about talking to Andrew was that, they generally ship stuff, right? And they've thought about new things. They've brought new things to market. They thoughtfully grew from the dossier product through faculty search, through faculty activity reporting, and now with lifecycle management and data services, it represents the next wave of expansion. And I think one of the things that I'm going to hold us to, and so I invite everyone to hold us to, is to continue to see that improvement in Interfolio. So what I would love to see, I guess, is the feedback in a couple of months' time about how things have gotten better and improvements that have come through that have come from this acquisition. So what I'm hoping you see as you look forward is genuine improvements. And if you don't see that, let us know, give us your feedback, because that's what we're looking for, and that's what we're trying to achieve. The second question around the future of higher ed, I think there's an observation that was made at the start of the pandemic period around how one of the effects of COVID was to really accelerate a lot of trends in the world that were probably already happening. Right? So even the fact that we're having this conversation now virtually, it feels like a very different experience than it did 2 years ago. So acceleration of things like online meetings and discussions, work from home, digitization of different processes, a whole bunch of things that were trends already accelerated. Some of the things that accelerated actually were maybe not so positive trends, like questions about value of education, value of university education, trying to think about what do the different parts of the university experience actually mean and add, right? What is the value of in-person versus the actual coursework and online and so on? Do we charge for things the same way and so on? What does it actually mean? And I think that the end result of that has been a whole bunch of experimentation. And periods of experimentation are always really interesting, and they're fascinating periods to be part of, and they're great fun to be part of. And I don't know exactly where all those experiments are going to land, but I think that the fact that we've been able to go through that process, not just higher ed, but it's really happened in our head, that we've thought about how to adapt to that new things have been tried and so on, means that probably the world will continue to look quite different in 2 to 3 years' time. And we need to be flexible. We need to be flexible in terms of understanding that some of the things that happened and experimented would work and some of the things won't. And the organizations and institutions may look a little bit different. But I think that's a good thing. And so I think it's a good moment in time for higher ed to think about what really matters and what really works, and how do we reconfigure the future based on that. I won't be so bold as to predict what that reconfiguration looks like. And I think in some ways, being part of that reconfiguration process is as exciting as knowing what the outcome is.
Are you sure you don't want to take out your crystal ball, Theo, and then let us know? And
yeah, well, I can confidently predict that there'll be a lot more adoption of Interfolio because it solves so many problems for you so much better.
Well done. Well done.
Yeah.
Andrew, that's a tough one to follow. Even with the curtains behind you, I mean, you're going to need the power of those curtains to help you out with that one.
Yeah. You know, you were asking about, the first question was what most people don't really know.
Yeah.
I would say, and Theo and I have sort of talked around this, but never, but the way I see it, something that is that Elsevier gives Interfolio a great capacity to increase our global footprint. Okay. And when I think about that, when you increase the global community, it actually enhances the ability and the benefit to the local community. Many of our international clients are looking to recruit from the United States, and the United States is looking to recruit and build a diverse scholarly body at their institution. And you know, many conversations we've been having, especially with our Canadian clients, is that yes, they want the ability to recruit from within Canada, from Europe, from the United States, and I think enhancing the ability to enhance our global footprint works to the ability of our clients to really enhance their local footprint for whatever that means. So I'll pause there and go to the second question. You were talking about the future of higher education.
Yep.
So, you know, my perspective is that higher education has shown a resiliency in the last 24 months that I didn't think was possible, and I'm sure many in the audience here probably didn't think was possible. We all remember the months following March of 2020, and I think higher education confronted an existential threat and had to change and turn rapidly. And I think higher education learned that it doesn't always have to turn like an aircraft carrier. I mean, people tease higher ed that it's a 600-year-old model that doesn't like to change. But what we saw in the months following March of 2020 is that we can change and we can learn new things and we can get smarter and faster. Enhanced digital products, automating shared governance and peer review workflows, using greater data sets and nimbly responding to new challenges with the right resources is the new normal. Yes. And we've shown that we can do that. So I think, you know, teaching and training the new learner, providing new types of programs that prepare them for jobs that didn't exist 3 years ago, researching the next life-saving vaccine and bringing it to market rapidly is our new normal. And I believe our combined products will help higher education research organizations to better succeed in this accelerating world.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Brilliant. Well, gentlemen, we are so good that we have extra time left over. So we are actually able to take some questions from the audience, which is the best part, I think, the best part. So I got one coming in for you. So here we go. How does Interfolio and Elsevier plan to address concerns about the amount of use of data to be absorbed via this vertical integration? I think we go with Theo on that one first. Go ahead, Theo.
Well, I guess over and above what I shared earlier, the main thing I would want to add is to say that I see this as a dialogue, that we don't go into this thinking that we know all the answers. These are really difficult questions about it, about how data is used and how data is used in these systems. And so what I would invite people to do, and what we'll aim to do, is to have conversations with people about how best to do this. Right? So what are the systems we need to put in place? What are the policies we need to put in place? What are the privacy concerns that we need to address? This is an ongoing area of, I think, constant two-way dialogue with us and our customers. And we want to get better at this and we want to give people more confidence. And really it comes down to being able to have that conversation. The other thing I'd say actually as an observation is that irrespective of whether you think, you know, I personally am trustworthy or Elsevier is trustworthy and so on, or Interfolio is, a lot of how I think about these things comes down to system design. It comes down to what are the incentives people have. So let's think about the incentives that Elsevier has here. And the incentives that Elsevier has here are, one, we don't sell advertising. We don't sell data to third parties. It's not part of our business model. We try and help people solve problems. So our incentive is to make sure people are comfortable with the data that's being used, because ultimately there's no third-party reason why we want that data. We're not trying to capture your data secretly because there's a revenue stream that we have. Those revenue streams just don't exist. So therefore, we have no incentive to do it. And the other part of it, I think, is that we don't work with millions of customers. We're not Facebook or Google that deals with 1 billion people. And when you deal with 1 billion people, each individual person, to be honest, is kind of not very visible to you. As long as the aggregate works, if you annoy 1% of your customer base or 0.5%, in practice, has millions of people. But from your point of view, it's invisible. Right? We don't do that. We're working with institutions. We have a few hundred customers. Each individual customer really matters to us. And so if you think about the incentives there, we really need to make sure it works with those customers. So sometimes we think about this in a very broad brush way around it, and we get grouped together with the Facebooks and Googles of the world. But the reality is we're operating in a very different space with very different objectives and very different incentives. So irrespective of what you believe about intentions, I think it's worthwhile to consider those incentives when you think about what you're signing up for, and think about those incentives when we have discussions, because we're already incentivized to make this work for you.
Andrew, what are your thoughts? First, that's a really tough answer to follow, but I've been thinking about it. The combination Elsevier and Interfolio is, for us, is about increasing the amount of data that we can help our clients activate to the benefit of the institution and the scholar. But at the right time, and activating it is about the right data, the right time, and the right place. Okay, and Interfolio has been pretty good at that, and I think we can, and we'll continue to get better at it. But when I say that, it's like, can I bring an impact vita into my annual review or promotion case? Okay, and then can I use that impact data not only there, but can I move it into a bio sketch? Okay, and so that's what I say. It's the right data, the right time, and the right place, and doing it under sort of the 3 core principles that were mentioned earlier, but doing it transparently, right? And being able to control that. And so it's about threading that needle of, as the data sets increase, it's about the right time, the right place, and the right data. So for example, it's a dream of mine to be able to nudge scholars about additional funding and award opportunities, based on discipline taxonomies. It's helpful to the institution. It's helpful to the scholar. So, I now see that coming to a reality. Right data, right time, right place, and hopefully with greater benefits to the scholar and to the institution.
Sounds like a great tagline. I like that a lot. Nicely done. All right, let's go with another audience question. So you talked about those 3 commitments, Andrew. So let's start with you. Would you please explain how these 3 commitments are applied to aggregated and anonymized data?
Actually, Andrew, shall I pick that one up?
I thought it was more of an Andrew question, but go ahead, Theo.
I think that was actually I brought those into the conversation. So
yeah. I'm gonna let you have that. And
also mainly because Interfolio doesn't really have aggregated anonymized data, but we do. So it's probably a better question for me to pick up. Susan, that's a really interesting question, and I suspect we could have a great conversation about it. But unfortunately, it's a question in chat, so I'm going to have to guess a little bit what you meant. So if I'm misinterpreting, feel free to post a follow-up. You raise a really interesting question here. There's a couple because when you aggregate and anonymize data, you do lose some of the things I talked about. You lose some of the transparency and you lose some of the traceability. Couple of observations I'd make. One is that, as I think about it, we do provide, for example, in a different product, SciVal, that we have, which is a tool that gives institutions a view on the world of research and allows them to do things like analyze their performance versus other institutions, analyze trends in the market, see what are growth areas in science, how do different countries compare. So we do a lot of benchmarking information based on underlying data sets like Scopus, which has a large A&I database. There, we sometimes present the results in an anonymized and aggregated way. We might say, this is how your institution compares to another institution, right, in terms of a research output or impact. But in the tool, you can dive into it. You can see behind a certain data set, what was the source behind it? So, where did the number of papers come from? And you can follow the trail back to the original papers, right? All the way back to the original papers. You can actually start at a country level and say, this was the impact of the US versus Canada, or whatever you want to compare to. And you can keep diving down until you see the individual papers. And the reason why the tool is built that way is precisely because of that transparency element. We want to be able to take a quality score, like, for example, the field-weighted citation impact of a particular field, which aggregates the impact across an entire field and domain, and then systematically dives through. So in the end, you could see the papers beyond that. Now, you may never do that. You may never want to actually go to that detail, but knowing that you can, if you have a question, gives people more confidence in the tool, right? Having said that, Susan does raise a valid question, because it's possible that there may be cases where the data is aggregated in a way that you can't trace back to it. And I think, Susan, that for me, that's almost partly an open research question in some way, in some cases. The more you see machine learning being used, the more you see some of these tools being used. One of the areas of active interest at Elsevier, but to be honest, it's an industry-wide concern, is explainability of AI models and machine learning models. How do we build great explainability so you can see why something predicted what it did? This is an area where we're trying to figure out ways to get better at, and we're trying to do fundamental research and getting better at, because we want to find ways to transfer the values we talked about around transparency and around openness into the world where people are increasingly using models that are harder to get these because they're more aggregated and anonymized. I hope that helps answer the question, Susan.
Andrew, any thoughts on that? You want to share anything?
Like Theo said, we don't really use aggregate anonymized data sets. And to the extent that we went down that path, it would really be to the benefit of the institution to understand the nuances that help them be better. And also if we did it for the scholar, about job trends from some of the dossier data, about the pace of tenured track positions against non-tenured track positions. Like, there's a lot of ways that this can help the community. We're not doing it right now, but we would do it in ways that we work with our steering committee, our product advisory council, and make sure we had their input on it. So that's how I would add transparency to the process. I'll sort of leave it in that camp for now.
Okay, thank you. All right, next question we have, I believe this one is for Theo. How does Elsevier help early career researchers?
I suppose there's a lot you can say about that. One of the things actually about Elsevier is because, and you asked the question at the Elsevier level, is we do have a lot of different products that touch on researchers in many different parts of their career. And for example, if you imagine the core journals products for Elsevier, early career researchers, where they publish, how they publish, and so on, is a very important thing that they need to be sensitive to. One of the ways we help early career researchers is by running a program we call the Researcher Academy. And the Researcher Academy provides early career researchers with training in how to essentially enter the world of research and how to be better researchers. And the kind of topics we train about are things like, for example, peer review. How do you do peer review? How do you best engage with the process? We talk to them about how other processes in scholarly publication work. How do you best write a paper? How do you get your message across, and so on. We talk about things in research integrity and ethics, about how you deal with those. I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to give early career researchers tools in order to help them engage in the scholarly ecosystem better. By the way, as I think about that, it's not just early career researchers. We work globally, and there are countries in the world that are standard parts of, the well-developed in the US and Europe. They've grown up with this infrastructure. They know the details of how it works. But if you're a researcher in Africa or in Latin America, and you are less connected to the world of research, the ability to be able to access resources like this, because maybe you don't have the same mentorship and the same training that you'd get at a US or European institution, the ability to access these kinds of resources around that is really important for engaging these communities into the broader research ecosystem as well. So it helps early career researchers in some parts of the world. It helps all researchers and others that have less access to this. And I think Elsevier sees those as really important investments to make, because part of what we're investing in is the health of global research. And we have a small, but we believe meaningful role to play in that.
Thank you, Theo. Andrew, any thoughts?
Yeah, I would add, now that we're part of Elsevier, we absolutely help early career scholars getting mentoring through our products, finding their jobs through our products, so finding other opportunities through our products. So I think we greatly sort of help and enhance Elsevier in helping early research scholars and academics and researchers.
Brilliant. Well, unfortunately, that's our time. So we have more questions, but we can't get to them right now. So I just want to say thank you so very much, Andrew and Theo, and for the audience for participating. This has been a wonderful fireside chat. For those who will be listening on the EdUp Experience, ladies and gentlemen, you just ed up.